Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires we call the internets is Joe, Crazy Writer. How you doing today, Joe?
Not so good. Met a girl named Pitches. She had huge cords. Told me I was the pits, so I had to beat it before she called the fuzz.
Please clap.
And who did you steal that from?
Kipadana. Life in the slaw lane. It's a garden out there.
I remember he had a song about fish, and he did some stand-up on The Tonight Show and has since vanished from the face of the earth.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, his song was Wet Dreams. Gonna have a wet dream. Cruising through the Gulf Stream. And then his next one was Life in the Slaw Lane, which was probably more, how would you say it, fruit and vegetable puns than should be allowed in a 4-minute song.
I think two is all you should be allowed in a 4-minute song.
He had more puns than I had sound bites in the first solo, Joe, I'm telling you.
Oh, glad I didn't hear it.
But I'm going to start out right away.
Right away?
Right away, and Ask The Strode.
Oh, I don't know if I'm ready.
You're going to be, because
I haven't taken my blood pressure medication yet.
This is a serious question here. I have it right here from the archives of Homeland Security. Mr. Strode, who is Luther Strode?
That is a comic series, 3 miniseries that was put out by Image. The creators of it came over to Marvel in between, I think, series 1 and 2, and did the new Ghost Rider as a Hispanic guy with a lowrider. And since it did not sell, they went back to Image and completed the 3 miniseries. Really good miniseries. I really enjoyed it.
But no relation.
No,
Damn,
no.
Thought I had
He's
something
fixed.
there. Okay, and from we haven't covered it, but you mentioned it at the last podcast, but we never got around to it.
Oh, I'm used to that.
Yeah, me too. You said you had read the Stan Lee book that I borrowed you.
Yes.
I was curious what you thought of it.
Well, Joe, as an amateur comics historian, but aren't we all?
Yeah.
I have been following a lot of people who have studied the history of Timely Atlas Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing my Jack Kirby biography, I had to dig into a lot of comics history as well. If you have never read anything about Stan Lee, this is a good starting point. Peter David did a really good job of capturing how Stan talks. Colleen Duran is a fantastic artist. I'm glad that she got this gig because we don't get enough art from Colleen Duran. I hope that she's, anytime she's doing something, I'm happy.
I'll toss in, there's a one being solicited now called Toll Bridges, which she did with Neil Gaiman. So
yes.
if you get a chance, let your comic shop know you want it.
And Peter David's Spider-Man 2099 is one that has restarted with the whole Marvel whatever it is.
We're still working on it.
The timeline in Stan's book is wrong, demonstrably wrong, very wrong. He gets a lot of things wrong. It's a memoir and not a biography. How's that?
Yeah.
I'm sure this is how Stan remembers it, but he gets a lot of things wrong that you can actually look at Marvel's publishing line and go, no, that book came out long before this one. That book came out much later than he says. This TV series did not happen till here. One of the things that I just kind of shook my head about is when he talked about Daredevil and Thor on TV in the 70s. Joe?
I'm listening.
When were the Incredible Hulk movies that had Daredevil and
Thor? I thought those were in the 80s.
Yes.
After the TV show.
Yes. So there were a lot of things where somebody should have helped Stan with some fact-checking. They did a book a while back where Stan recorded a lot of stuff, and one of the things he did at the time, he brought in Roy Thomas, and Roy Thomas wrote about it in Alter Ego. But he brought in Roy to correct a lot of the timeline errors or, fill in gaps for Stan. Stan has notoriously said he has a bad memory. This book, it doesn't look like anybody did that for him. The stories are good, and the stuff about his personal life is really good. But the stuff about Marvel timeline, well, don't just, yeah. Pick up the 2 books, The Secret History of Marvel Comics and the Sean Howe book on Marvel, and they'll give you a much better history of Stan's working life than this book did. How's that for being diplomatic?
Excellent.
Thank you. We got a review.
We does?
Yes. Don't pull a Jen and say, because you've had 2 weeks to read this book, Joe.
Book?
And you may have even read it before.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta honestly say I did not read the review.
You didn't read Paper Girls?
Well, I didn't say that. I said I didn't read the review because I had already read Paper Girls.
Oh, okay.
I've been picking it up in comic form, but we were sent a review because it's coming out in a graphic novel, I believe the first 5 issues.
Yes, first 5 issues as a trade paperback. Joe, what did you think of the first 5 issues of Paper Girls?
Paper Girls, saga writer Brian K. Vaughan launched a brand new ongoing series. And he's brought along superstar Wonder Woman artist Cliff Chiang, if I'm pronouncing that right. And it goes in the early hours after Halloween of 1988. 4 12-year-old newspaper delivery girls uncover the most important story of all time. Stand By Me meets War of the Worlds in this mysterious young adult adventure. Something we don't talk a lot about are covers. And Paper Girls #1 cover is bright yellow with kind of maybe a mauve logo, and it's got the girls on it right there. And then #2, of course, is bright red, and it goes with a blue logo. And, I mean, this is what attracted me to Paper Girls right away. If the cover is interesting, I will pick it up. And I did. And dummy me put it back. I mean, I looked at it. I thought it looked readable. About issue 4, I went back and picked it up because Dana called me and said, "Oh man, are you reading Paper Girls? This is so cool." So I was able to pick it up between Hot Comics and The Source. And I've read it so far as a comic book. So I haven't read the book form, but I've enjoyed it. The art, again, is very distinct. You know the character's face. You know who they are throughout. You're not constantly playing guesswork. It takes place a lot at night, so the shades are kind of a little darker. The panels are laid out very well, so you're able to follow along. And it gets to the point where at the end of an issue, I could not wait for the next issue. And I believe, I don't know if they've gone into second prints or not. They did have a Midtown autograph edition that you could have picked up, and of course there was a variant from Dynamic Forces. But so far the first 5 issues are out. I don't see an incredible price jump on them, so you could probably still get in, or just wait for the graphic novel to appear, which should be coming out pretty soon. But I definitely enjoyed it. I found the mystery of what's going on compelling. I found the kids believable. And every issue kind of ended on a cliffhanger, so you're kind of like, So maybe do yourself a favor, do your heart, your blood pressure a favor, just buy the graphic novel. What were your impressions on it, Corey?
I had heard a lot of good things about Paper Girls, and I'm a big fan of Brian K. Vaughan. If you know his comics, you know that he does stuff like Ex Machina, Why the Last Man, Runaways, Saga, and when I heard that this was... Well, first I'd heard that it was about 4 teenage girls, early teens, fighting an alien invasion or fighting zombies or fighting this. People weren't really clear on it. I was interested, but I said, well, I'll wait for the trade paperback. And having read it, the first thing that popped into my head was that it seemed a lot like one of the Kirby Kid Gang stories, where Kirby back in the 40s and then again in the 70s did these stories about a group of kids who would get whipped up into adventures. And so, the Boy Commandos or the Newsboy Legion or things like that. This is almost like a modern updating of that, where you've got these 4 girls, they all have distinct personalities, it's late 80s, and then weird stuff starts happening. And the story-wise, it really pulled me in because the characters are all interesting. Cool stuff happens. There was a sequence that kind of made me feel like they were cheating when a gun went off. And Joe, you probably know what I'm talking about. It felt like the resolution of that was kind of a cheat. But the thing that I really like about it is the 4 characters don't quite know what's going on, and neither do we, so we don't know who to trust. And that's a really good hook if there's a world that you're exploring along with the characters. The art was understated. This is something that could have been very bombastic, very, very big. There's dragons and spaceships and stuff, but it's understated. And the color palette they use is very muted. It sort of brings it down to so there's big things happening on a human level. It doesn't feel like, when you read a George Perez comic, it feels big. It feels like, a big widescreen movie. This feels more like an indie movie. This feels more small, which fits with the characters because the characters are just not quite knowing what's going on. Highly entertaining. And it was one of those where I kept reading it, and as I'm reading it, I'm actually forcing myself to slow down to enjoy the art because you really want to know what's coming next. Joe, buy, borrow, or ignore?
I bought it.
I am buying it too. This is a buy for me. And to me, it just kind of shows that Image has taken over that place in comics that Vertigo and Dark Horse really used to hold, where it was independent creators and creators who are kind of have a different vision of comics than superhero books. Vertigo used to do that. Dark Horse used to do that. Image is now where people are doing that. And I wanted to bring that up because there have been changes at Vertigo that I think are kind of important for us to talk about.
Before we get there, we got to have some sad news.
Uh-oh. I hear the music.
Yep.
Sad news, everyone. Sad news.
And, of course, as you know, we've had 2 entertainment deaths in the last week. That one of them was shocking. The other one pretty much rocked the frickin' world.
One of them was not shocking, and the other one was.
Well, I think it is because it's just something, unless you're following them day to day, it's kind of like all of a sudden, oh. And the first one, of course, was Chyna from WWE. And I mention that because, of course, she had 2 comic books that came out from Chaos back in the WWE's Attitude Era. And if you're so inclined, you can pick them up fairly cheap. The first one was just her kind of walking the streets, protecting the bank, daughter of a millionaire. Photo covers on one. There was a special cover on the other. And then there was a Chyna 2, which had a couple, 2 photo covers and a number 1. Same thing, round 2, she returns as a bodyguard who protects the innocent. I have no idea where Chaos was going with these. But
they probably didn't either.
Yeah, they were there. And, of course, the other one was Minnesota's own Prince. And that one is still rocking the world.
I want to talk a little about Chyna's death, if that's okay. One of the things that is, I've been talking about it a lot of people online, oh, I'm so sad. Oh, this is such a shock. No, it's not a shock. And I'm going to tell you why it's not a shock. After she left the WWE, she started showing up on reality TV shows. And on every one of these shows, every one of them, she was drinking constantly and strung out on drugs. WWE sent her to rehab a couple of times. She went to celebrity rehab. Yes, she did do some wrestling after she left the WWE. She was brought over to Japan, and they treated her well because she was an American star, but they finally had to get rid of her because of her drug and alcohol use. She has been self-destructing for 15 years. She could never get over the fact that her WWF career was done. And for the last 2 years, she's had somebody with a video camera follow her around making a, quote, documentary, unquote, to the point where she went to the WWE headquarters and they were tweeting out, Chyna's triumphant return to WWE. And what it was, she just was in their parking lot filming stuff. And if you use drugs and abuse alcohol for that long and you don't get help, you're going to die. It's like smoking. If you smoke, you're going to die. Now, yes, we're all going to die, but if you abuse your body past the point it could take, I was amazed she lived as long as she did. Every public appearance, her words were slurred. She looked out of it. She was just, I mean, I've been to bars where they're throwing people out who weren't as messed up as she was. I worked in treatment group homes. If you're an addict and you don't get help, you're going to die. So if you have a friend who's an addict, you got to help them get help. Because there's only one end to that story. There's only one end to that story. So the whole, I'm shocked by Chyna's death. Well, that just means you haven't been paying attention, because you can't do that many drugs for that long and live to your old age. Prince, on the other hand, that was shocking.
See, I think I disagree with you on Chyna, because I guess I was looking more at, she had made overtures. She seemed to be trying to go the right direction. They talk about my brain just shut off. Who's the last wrestler who had passed away? And Chyna had gone over and actually talked to Triple H. And, you know, I guess I was looking at it. Okay, there are glimmers of hope, but
if you
it was
saw
probably too far.
But if you saw the videos afterward, no, she made Amy Winehouse look sober. It's a sad story, yes, but sorry, man, don't, it's the old story. Don't do drugs. They're going to kill you.
Now, Prince, on the other hand, boy, if you've got a Prince comic book in your collection, this is the time to sell that sumbitch, because, I mean, nothing brings out speculators more like death. While Cory was talking, I was just looking online, and there are very few Prince comics. I mean, Rock and Roll Comics did a Prince comic from Revolutionary Comics where they just did an unauthorized thing. But yeah, the two I'm thinking of are from, what'd they call it? It was DC, Piranha, wasn't it?
DC published them under their Piranha line.
Yeah. And they had Prince Alter Ego, and there was one other one, and I was just
3 Chains of Gold.
Yeah. So, but if you happen to have Batgirl number 40, which did a Purple Rain Prince homage, oh man, people are going crazy on that one too. So it's just the nature. I haven't even looked up Prince autographs. I mean, I don't even want to see them, because it was shocking. It was just one of those where, like, you get on Facebook and it's like, oh, look, Chyna passed away. I didn't believe it, so I go to pwinsider.com, because if you need any wrestling news that's true, they had it, and unfortunately they had it. And then, of course, Prince passed away, and then the interwebs exploded. It's almost like when Michael Jackson died. Farrah Fawcett died, and everybody's, oh, that's too, Michael Jackson died. nuclear bomb went off. And rightly so. I'm still looking at these prices. It's just crazy.
Well, and the DVD for Purple Rain, last I heard yesterday, was going for $150, $200 because, you know, they all sold out, and now it's people selling their own copies.
Oh, yeah. I remember when Purple Rain first came out, and I was 18 and my sister was 16. And she was a big Prince fan. Just absolutely loved it. So I figured, I'll get her Purple Rain. And I did, and I brought it home and gave it to her for Christmas. Oh, man. My mom, the good Catholic woman, went batshit crazy. Oh, my God, you can't... I mean, Prince was the Antichrist. I hadn't seen her react so hard since I came home with the Kiss Super Special, printed in real Kiss blood. And so I had to return it. And it might have even been a VHS at the time. I don't know. I remember,
yes, it was VHS.
I think I paid $25 for it, which probably sounds about right for VHS about that time. And not more than, was it last year or 2 years ago, I finally gave her a Prince DVD. And my mom just gave me that look. I've got no Prince stories. I mean, I spotted him once at the fairgrounds. Not him, but his huge bodyguard that later went on to become a preacher. I was like, I know that guy. And right in front of him was a little guy, Prince. And, you know, as Minnesotans, you know, even if you did recognize him, you'd more likely just let Prince be because that's the way we are. We're Minnesota nice. I liked his music. I like that, but I am so woefully ignorant of anything beyond the hits he did in the 80s into the 90s. And I know he was prolific. He just kept coming out with stuff. I used to love the interview when Jim Walsh, who is an entertainment reporter, I have no idea where he is now, but he would interview him for like City Pages or one of the local newspapers because Jim Walsh understood Prince, and Prince would allow him to interview him because he knew that Jim would come at him from someone who at least listened to the music and not just, you know, whatever the hits were. You live close to Paisley Park, don't you?
Yes. I have talked a little about it on the show in the past. I moved here because of Purple Rain. I was in college when that movie came out, and it was my first month of college. And if I didn't have anything to do, I would go over to the theater to the cheap show and watch Purple Rain again. So I must have seen that 9 or 10 times in the theater.
I can confess, I've only seen the ending title song. You know, where he runs through the bowels of First Avenue all pissed off.
Yes.
And then he comes back and sings the song.
Then when I got out of college, I couldn't find a job down in central Illinois. I still remember my interview at the Kentucky Fried Chicken, where they told me that they would not be hiring me because I didn't look at Kentucky Fried Chicken as a career.
Derp.
And my future ex-wife's mother lived out in Young America and sent us a copy of the Minneapolis Sunday paper, and the want ads were thicker than the Peoria paper. And I didn't want to move. I didn't want to move. I hated change. I kind of freaked out around change. But it's okay.
Change.
I know Minneapolis because I've seen Purple Rain so many times. Came up here, was able to find a job, have lived here ever since. I live in Chaska. Prince lived in Chanhassen. I have told the story about how Prince's hairdresser...
Which, if you're geographically challenged, is almost directly north of Chaska.
I live 7 miles from Paisley Park. I've told the story on the show about how Prince's hairdresser came into the Shinders I worked at 6 months before it was announced he was doing the soundtrack to the Batman movie, asking about Batman comics, and I loaded him up with the good stuff. Everybody around here has a Prince story.
Oh, yeah.
I have seen him in concert a few times. I have been out to the Paisley Park dance nights. I used to go to those back in the 90s. I would get done with work at the group home.
I will pay cold hard cash if anybody's got a video of Cory busting a move.
I would get done at the group home at 11:30 on a Friday night, and it's, well, I've been working with these teenagers. I'll just go over there. Maybe Prince will perform. He would come out and perform like once every 6-7 times. And he sometimes would come out and just do a song. Sometimes he would come out and do like an hour and a half. It was something. And last night I went to Target Field where they showed Purple Rain.
I know. I was at work.
And I had not seen that movie in a long time. And it really struck me about how interwoven Prince's music is in so many parts of my life. And so many people I've known I associate with Prince songs and what album was out at that time. And it has really struck me hard. Because he's, you saw him like a few weeks ago. He still looked like he was in his 20s. I recently saw a performance of him from a few months ago where he was doing all the dance moves, everything. He looked, looked exactly the same. We're not going to know what he died from for months, they say. But in a lot of ways, he was very tangential to comics. He back in the late 80s, early 90s, he seemed to be very involved in it when he did the Batman soundtrack. And then he and DC did comics together, and a lot of the people who worked on the Prince comics went on to work on Milestone. But there are some celebrity deaths where you go, oh, okay, that's sad. And there are some where it's just kind of hits you. And this one really hit me pretty hard over the weekend. Not a comic book related thing, but a very local thing. And I've been out to Paisley Park a couple of times since, and I've never seen anything like it. I've been down to Graceland, and I've seen the people, put all the stuff at Graceland and did the tour of Graceland. I've never seen anything like what is out at Paisley Park right now with the flowers and the balloons.
Well, even at First Avenue, the crowd that formed there was amazing.
Yeah, First Avenue announced that they would just be playing Prince music all night, and I had to work that night. And I was kind of sad because I thought, oh, I'd love to go down there. And then you'd look at the video from there. It's like you wouldn't be able to get within a city block.
Oh, yeah. My sister actually went down there and joined. It started, at noon and went to the following day, 7 a.m. is when they finally dissipated.
So,
oddly enough, that wasn't the sad news I wanted to talk about.
Oh.
But I
thought Chyna's was...
Well, okay. There's always a comic connection, and being that they both were in comic books, I thought I'd bring it up. But City Pages, which is the local, I don't know what you call it, rag. It's
a local alternative paper.
That's owned by somebody out of New York.
No, Star Tribune bought it.
Oh, recently. They bought it back?
Yeah, because the Village Voice used to own it, and the Star Tribune actually has recently bought it. So the alternative paper in the Twin Cities is now owned by the #1 daily paper in the Twin Cities. They just come out with their super thick Best of the Twin Cities issue, which is always a lot of fun because it allows you to find places that you wouldn't even think of. Like they have a place called Down in the Valley, which has, books. It's a head shop type thing. It's got a lot of vinyl, a lot of Funko Pop figures, 3 store locations. Never heard of it. But they do 2 things. The first thing they do is a reader's poll, and I just thought it was interesting because as they go through the shopping and services, they did not poll for the best comic shop, but they did poll for the best gaming shop, which ended up being Source Comics and Games. But then when the City Pages comes and they decide they're going to talk about what they like as their best comic shop or their best game store, for gaming store, oh, hang on a second. They chose Mead Hall Games and Comics, which is located 1425 LaSalle Avenue in Minneapolis. I've been there before. We actually reviewed a visit to their shop when Dana and I were out running around. It's a very nice store, very nice ambiance, not very big, certainly not Source big,
But for some reason, they give them the best gaming shop. I don't know because I don't play a lot of games. They weren't that big on comics, but, they could order them. I don't know. For the best comic book store, they chose Big Brain Comics, which is 1027 South Washington Avenue in Minneapolis. For the best bookstore, they chose Bone Shaker Books, Minneapolis. Best used bookstore, Minneapolis. The problem with City Pages is they don't cross the damn river. They rarely ever come into St. Paul. And I happen to know there were probably better comic stores at one time in St. Paul other than Big Brain Comics. But they always chose Big Brain Comics. And rightly so. That's not the sad news. The sad news is that word on the street, they will be closing this summer. I don't know if it's true. Somebody said there is a lease sign in the window. I haven't heard of any discount. I haven't heard any scuttlebutt other than people asking questions online with no answers. I'm going to send our investigative reporter, my daughter Dana, who shops there frequently, is going to go in and get to the bottom of this Big Brain story. But if they do indeed close, it will be very sad because they are one of the best places to go to get comics, I would bet you'd be able to find a run of Paper Girls there if you wanted to just not wait for the book and go pick it up. If you're looking for eclectic comics, they were always the place to go. If a local store sold out, they would be the place I'd want to go. So while I'm kind of torqued off about City Pages just choosing Minneapolis stores, I'm real saddened to hear that Big Brain may be closing. On the plus side, online, they did knock off 4 suburban comic book store gems, and this is on their online stuff. They, of course, mentioned The Source, who quite possibly is the biggest place in town to get your superhero fix. But for people who can't get in Roseville, they dropped the names, of course, of Hot Comics on Nicollet Avenue in Richfield, a place we've been to dozens of times, oodles of time. Another place, Mind's Eye Comic down in Eagan, which is, again, another fantastic place to go to. They mentioned Captain Jack's Comics, which I've been to a couple of times. I think we stopped there once or twice.
Yes, we have been there.
A place I've never been to called Dreamer's Vault Games, which is 3015 Utah Avenue in St. Louis Parks. And, of course, they say it might not have the largest collection of comics around, but they have that. They combine superheroes with fantasy and magic. So I will have to check that out because that actually sounds kind of cool. And what will be interesting, of course, is just how many of these people will actually wind up at the MCBA Spring Con, or I suppose as they like to call it, MSP Comic Con 2016. I think we're going to be doing something there, aren't we, Cory?
Why, yes, we will be live streaming the whole thing. If you're listening to this here podcast, head on over to the YouTubes, look for Cory Strode, subscribe because we put up our podcasts up there as videos as well. But subscribe so that you can be there when we start live streaming. We're going to be live streaming the entire time the doors are open, and we may be live streaming before the doors open. After the doors open, I will be getting in my car and going home and hiding because I will have been around people all day, and that's hard for me.
Butch is coming, and we're going to make sure you stay firmly in that chair keeping that podcast going, because if you want to stop by, say hi, you want to stop by, plug something, if you're be a creator, or even if you didn't set up and you just want to plug something, please do. And while you're doing your spring cleaning, also remember my daughters will be running the charity booth, which will be right next to us, so you'll be able to go to one to the other almost right away. And if you got anything that you're not quite sure what to do with, and we're talking almost anything. I mean, graphic novels, comics, toys, CDs, homemade Prince vinyl dolls, tube socks, ShamWows, quart of motor oil. Remember, that's all happening May 13th and 15th, 2016, Minnesota Street Grandstand, which is in the fairgrounds, thank God. 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m., 5 p.m. Sunday. They're going to do grab bags, 500 Saturday, 250 Sunday. Over 250 guests, including the momentarily absent Jen Wicked. Admission's $14, but as always, if you bring $1,
bring more than $1.
They switched it. What they said is $1 off with food shelf donations. And then all that food just goes right to the Minnesota food shelves. And, of course, advance tickets are on sale, www.mcbacomiccon.com. Now, are we going to do something special podcast-wise before?
Well, I can't spill the beans. I can't give our secrets away.
It could be foreshadowing.
I'm not going to be giving away any secrets.
Why not? I mean, geez, Previews does it all the time.
And it sucks.
Yeah, well,
I'm protesting spoilers.
It could happen. I mean, if you really get bored, you could go back previous years and listen to that because it'll probably be
a lot like that.
Maybe we'll just rerun the old ones. I don't know. But mark it on your calendar.
Maybe we'll have more people this time.
It could, or maybe it'll just be Cory. Hello? Is anybody out there? Hello?
Maybe everybody will abandon me. I'm used to people abandoning me.
Cory, do you got a hanging in the home story? Or no, do you got a Tales from the Shop story?
Not off the top of my head.
Because I got a hanging in the home story for you.
What?
I know.
Now you're stealing my gimmick.
You're damn right I'm going to steal your gimmicks, and for good reason.
If you steal somebody's gimmick in wrestling, you could end up not working.
Well, fair is fair. Jen and I tried to replace you. You replaced me. It's the circle of life in podcasting. Yeah, believe it or not, I have a hanging in the home story.
Uh-oh. You've been hanging at a group home?
Well, I don't know if it's a group home, but it was kind of a home. One of this here, I'm going to break kayfabe for a moment. And again, I'm going to have to offer kudos to Cory because we are recording this mere hours before Cory's going to try to drop it. Because last week, as we're sitting here, my mother-in-law passed away. She'd been ailing. She's in her 80s. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but, she welcomed me into the family when I started dating my then girlfriend, now wife, Chris. And it's been real hard on Chris because she's been kind of the one to organize everything. And then Monday or so ago, I was off, thank God, but then I get a call from Chris that her mom did pass away. A mixed blessing in disguise because, when you get to that age and you're suffering from pain and your dementia, you almost want your loved one to pass away just to be in peace. But when it happens, it's still a shock. And I went and I helped out Chris, and we went to the home right away. And the whole family came, except my nephew who's out in New York, but somebody contacted him. And a couple things happened, of course, that I think if I'd have thought of, it would have happened. And Cory, this has probably happened more than you want to admit when you're working at the home. But, when we got there, she was where she passed away. I believe she passed away in her sleep. Her body was there. We came in, we said our goodbyes. And then the funeral home came with a gurney to remove the body. And for some reason, that kind of shocked me. It shouldn't have. I mean, have you seen that at your job, Cory?
What usually happens where I work is most of the people who pass away there are on hospice care. And when someone is on hospice care, the rules around how they're treated change. Pain management becomes primary. And the people who are in charge of hospice take on a lot of responsibilities. So if someone who's on hospice care passes away, when they pass, we call them. They show up, usually within minutes, and they handle everything. And an ambulance will take the person because they do have to be officially pronounced dead.
I'm not sure if I know Gene was under hospice, but I'm not sure. Maybe they did all that before I actually got there because I had to go get my daughters. So there might have been. It may also
be that they have people there who can do the official. This person is officially dead. We don't have that. We have one RN and we have LPNs. So no one is empowered by the state to do that declaration. If they have someone at the facility your mother-in-law was at, they would be able to go, yes, this person is dead, and then they don't have to go to the hospital to have that pronunciation done.
That was probably the case. That might have happened before I actually arrived. Because when we got there, like I said, the father-in-law was there, my wife, the brother were there. And like I said, I came in, paid my respects. They removed the body, which kind of, again, shocked me because, I mean, I realized this would be the last time I would actually physically see her. And, of course, the next time I saw her was at the church when she had been cremated and inside the urn. You know, I talked about this when our friend Nick passed away. What shocked me was that, well, and kind of amused me, is that he was put in a 1919 root beer quart container. And I didn't even realize it was him until after I left. So it was just this disconnect between, you know, body removal, urn. I did help out, though. I mean, I knew my in-laws were just, I don't know where they were at, but I cleaned out the room, took care of all her belongings at the home. And we had the funeral last week. Even that was kind of shocking in some way because it first of all, it was at a church that I went to high school at. And so, of course, you're walking in. If you ever go to some place at like your old school or that, you start having flashbacks, you know, just what's changed, what hasn't, something's wrong. Where did this there used to be a stairwell over here. Now, where'd it go? And I saw friends of the family and friends I went to school with that came in and were saying the same thing at the church. Another thing that was different was that the church has embraced, again, we're talking Catholic Church, a more communal feel, more of a community. It used to be walk in, be quiet, be real reverent, you know, keep your tones hushed. No, you come in and you talk and you grieve and you look at the pictures. You know, we had the reception there and everything. I mean, I got to admit, I was having altar boy flashbacks too. You know, during the mass, like I remember doing funerals as an altar boy, and it's been a real emotional week, you know, just dealing with that. On Monday, as we record this podcast, on Sunday, she's being interned out at Fort Snelling because my father-in-law was in the military, so they get to go together. So it's been a really weird week. Just the things, you know, I hadn't thought of, you know, like, yes, they do remove the body. Who cleans out the room? You know, I stepped up to help out with that. And, you know, in a couple weeks, we're going to go over and help my father-in-law, I guess, clear out her clothes. I don't know. Just, it's kind of strange because this is the closest I've had anybody personally pass away. And it just made a tough week. And, you know, Cory, I want to thank you publicly because you've helped me, you know, with offers to help Chris. There's been a couple times we've had to postpone the podcast, and of course that just means more work for you to get it done. But I'm very grateful for your offers and such. I had this actually to end on a joke, but I decided not to.
I think one of the things that we as friends and people, I talked about it a little with Prince. We know that there's an end. We know there's an end. We know, we you know, but we rarely want to think about it. We rarely want to go, well, this is what it entails. One of the things about the group home I work at now is that when I started there, I knew I would be dealing with that. And when I was younger, I had a choice. I could work with developmentally disabled or I could work in juvenile justice. I chose juvenile justice because it's, well, these people will either get better and go home or they will go back into the system. Whereas with developmentally disabled people, this is their home and they will be here until they can't function. They will either go to a nursing home or they will pass away. And I have never been good at dealing with ends. I've never been good at dealing with change. I've never been good at dealing with when things end. And as my parents get older and my friends get older and I get older, there was a part of me that said, I need to learn how to deal with that. I need to learn how to accept it. And my son and I have had some conversations about what to do with my stuff when I pass. Joe and Jen both have kind of forced me to say, all right, if I pass, here are the passwords, here are the keys to the kingdom, basically. So that if people want to keep the podcast going, you can keep the podcast going. At least you can keep it online. At least you can keep it available for people. Or you can download it and keep it. And it's not something we like thinking about. It's not something we want to think about. But I think it's important, especially if you are a collector of some kind, to kind of put a plan in place for your loved ones to say, by the way, when I pass away, I have some comics that are worth good money. Or I have some of this, which is, I don't want to say historically whatever, but this is kind of rare. Don't just, take it to the Goodwill. And we talked about it a little with Nick's passing, and there's still, there's all sorts of things about Nick's collection and the things Nick did for the comic convention and his personal collection where people just, they don't know. The MCBA had to get a new website because he didn't give anybody the password to the old website, so nobody can update it. So the old website's just there, and it will be there, and no one knows how long it's paid for, and no one knows what goes on with it, but it can't be changed, so they had to get a new one. When the ownership of the convention itself was complicated because he passed, and okay, now what happens with that? So while it's not something you want to think about, if you're doing something creative, if you're doing something with people, or if you have your collection, you should sit down with the people you love and the people you care about and say, when I die, here's the stuff, and here's the best way to, get money out of it.
And even with Chris's parents, they already had their funeral paid for. They had the budget set for flowers. They had the food for the, again, at Catholic funerals, there's always the meal afterwards. And so, and they actually had money left over. So, but everything was taken care of. It didn't fall upon the kids to figure out how they're going to do that. It's expensive stuff. I mean, when my daughter Dana was with my wife and they were talking with the funeral home trying to get things going, Dana just kind of said, oh, she was aghast at the prices and how much everything cost. She said, Ma, just leave my body out in the woods for the wolves to eat. And the funeral home guy laughed and goes, yeah, but the DNR doesn't like that. So,
one of the most vile things about my job, I work HR and I get calls. The most vile thing is the funeral home calling, asking if the person had a pension or life insurance. And because of privacy laws, we can't tell them anything. And they lose their minds. And they threaten lawsuits, and they will be on the phone with the lawyer calling, saying, you have to tell us if this person had life insurance because we have to be paid for the funeral. And it's no, our lawyers tell us we don't have to tell you anything because you're not the beneficiary of the person's life insurance. You're not listed as a beneficiary on their pension. We don't even have to tell you that they ever worked here. So we're not geeking real hard on this episode,
nope.
But the business of death is something that if you put it off, someone else is going to have to clean it up. My youngest uncle, my mother's youngest brother, kind of a screw up through his life, didn't really keep a regular job. The last few years of his life, he lived with my grandmother. He smoked constantly. He drank a lot. He passed away a few years ago, just in his sleep. And my grandmother, who is not young, because I'm not young, first she had to deal with the fact that she was having to deal with the death of her youngest child, and then the fact that he had nothing. You know, they couldn't afford anything for his funeral, and that burden fell on her. Thankfully, the family was able to step up and help, but he didn't plan for anything. He didn't plan for anything because he was living day to day. And you gotta tell people, this is what you should do. My son knows that if I die, I am to be strapped to fireworks and shot into the air. So that
I hope you're losing weight. That'd be a lot of fireworks.
I'm losing weight.
Just saying.
Are you going with the fat jokes now?
I might have.
Are you calling me a tubby bastard?
I'm not a bastard. Yeah, tubby. No. Fat
Okay.
maybe. I don't know.
I'll have you know that since January of last year, I am down 35 pounds.
Well, if you quit snacking between snacks, you could be 65 down.
That's true.
It's not like you ate a lot of pizza during WrestleMania, but.
Yeah, that's how I could lose more weight. Anytime it's time for a meal, somebody call, Cory, I need help.
Help!
So with my comics and trade paperbacks and all that stuff, what I've told the boy is that he should work with a reputable comic shop, and I've given him the names of some of the big ones because I've got some stuff that's worth some money. I've got a lot of older stuff. I have a lot of Bronze Age, and kind of letting him know how the market works. Since he knows how the market works, they're not going to come in and pull an Edgar Church thing like Mile High.
Well, he can always, if I'm around, he can always give me a call, and I can always help him out too. I mean, that's not a problem.
Right. But I have also told him that the EC volumes are just there to be passed down because they are supposedly bound on paper that lasts for 250 years, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm very proud of that collection. And it's pretty, honestly, I'm on EC discussion sites. It's pretty rare that somebody has the entire Russ Cochran, all of the sets. Because some people didn't get the pre-trends and they sold out. Some people didn't get the Pictofiction and they sold out. The Mad volumes went out of print very quickly. And on like Tales from the Crypt or Weird Science, stuff like that, he was able to do second printings. With Mad, he was allowed to do one printing and that's it. So when they were gone, they were gone. And my friend Tommy, who was big into collecting the Mad stuff, he missed out when the box set came out. He had to piece it together on eBay, and it took him 15 years to get all 4 volumes and the slipcase. So this is kind of rare stuff, and I want it taken care of. And who knows, maybe my great-nephew will go, EC, oh my God!
Or just sell it on eBay first from scratch.
Sell it on eBay.
Sell it. Thanks, Uncle Cory. You're always the best.
Sell it on eBay for a couple of shots of heroin. There we go.
Well, at least a couple Guinness shots, maybe. I mean,
you know who's not going to be selling stuff for their heroin addiction?
I'm scared to ask.
These guys are our sponsors.
Wow, all dubious intros. Yes, our sponsors are heroin free.
Believe it or not, kids, this silliness has actual real sponsors. Our first sponsor is Graze.com. Graze gives you healthy snacks sent to your house. You can have them delivered weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, And your first box is free if you use the code CORYS3R5B. Our second sponsor is Bombas. Bombas socks are some of the best socks in the world, and remember, for every pair you buy, they donate a pair to a homeless shelter or other worthy cause. Just go to bombas.gotocloud.org/SF30. That's right, those are our ads. Go check out our sponsors. Well, and after we do the ads, the most awkward segue in the history of this podcast, and that's saying a lot.
Oh.
After we do the ads, we talk about the eBays. Joe, what's going on the eBays?
Well, it's a lot of things have been selling. It's actually been a lot of fun. Again, if I urge people, if you are interested in anything, KRAYZ, you can go to our host website, which is Cory.
Which one?
Well, I take it you're trying to get to my eBay site.
Oh, trying to get to the eBay site. That's crazycomics.solitairerose.com.
There you go, and you can get there. And of course, if you are a listener to the show and you do win something, I will give you something out of my vast accumulation of crap as a freebie. And the reason I mention this is because as I go through mostly the stuff that's on eBay, I'm going to be weeding out a lot of it and donating it to the charity booth that my daughters will be running. So if there's something there you've been eyeballing, you can either give me a best offer, and especially if you tell me you're a friend of the show, I'll probably accept it. I think the last best offer I rejected, and just as a sidebar, best offer is not on every eBay auction. I might put something up and say, I've got this unique run of Everyday Gods for $5,000 or best offer. And the idea is then you could send, well, how about if I give you 2 cents and a Kit Kat bar? And
ooh, a Kit Kat bar.
I know. See, things are looking up. And the person can either say yes or no. The only one I've ever rejected, I had a $300 model of the Star Blazer ship, the Argo or Yamato for the Japanese fans, and somebody offered me $20. Seriously? Yeah, that was a no. But for the most part, everything I've sold, especially in the last couple of weeks, has been a best offer type thing. And we're talking things like I had a Peanuts Volume 2, number 25, 65th anniversary variant cover, which was cool because it had all the Peanuts on it. A Legion of Superheroes number 1, where Jim Lee did the Saturn Girl variant cover. I'm telling you, they should just say, Jim, you only get let loose if you draw a DC girl for a variant cover. Otherwise, you're locked in the office until you're done. Because he's like Linsner and Land and Julie Bell and Greg Horn, all these other guys. Where was it? I sold it like $30, and there's guys that have it $50 on eBay. So, it's just crazy. Kind of on the other end of the spectrum, I sold a Team 7 number 1 variant cover. Team 7 was back in the Image days with Wildstorm. It was kind of like the pre-World War II, Korea War history. I don't remember. Willis Portaccio signed it, but they signed it while he was on tour doing the Chicago Iron Man tour. He stopped at Dreamland Comics, Graham Cracker, Windy City Comics, and then as he signed it, you'd get a certificate of authenticity. So while the variant's not rare, getting one that's been signed with the certificate was rare. So just a lot of fun, a lot of different things. But like I said, the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be weeding out some of the stuff and either come early, get to the charity booth and dig through the variant covers and hope I brought the one year after there, or just come give me a best offer and go for it. That's enough shilling.
Well, you know what that means.
Freaking and geeking.
That's right. Joe, what you freaking on?
One day after my mother-in-law's funeral, I get written up at TSA for taking too many sick days. Let us examine this phenomena of TSA's fuckery. There's a lot of it. All you have to do is flip on a line and people are complaining about how long the lines are. It's a beautiful thing. They're cutting our staffing and budget at the same time more people are flying, and then they wonder why the lines are long. And the baggage side of things, of course, everything's in line, so things are going great. However, in February, and I think I might have covered this in a podcast, I hurt my back because before the inline was going, we had these machines that you had to physically load and unload the machines in. Why? We're looking for bombs. You know, we don't, bombs in check luggage is bad, okay? So I hurt my back. So I get this thing saying, you have used more than six days in the last 4 months. Okay, let us examine this. 6 days, eh? Okay, well, I was on my back for 3 of them because I fucked up my back unloading your goddamn machine with an overstuffed ski bag that weighed way more than it was supposed to and had more in it than just skis. The airlines usually overlook that shit. So let's see, that's 3 days. 1 day to go to the doctor. Okay, that's down to 4. Oh, and 1 day to go to a fucking funeral for my mother-in-law. So out of those 6 days, there was really only 2 that were sick calls. And even one of those was just, I came in late because, you know, if you're late, that counts equal to a sick call. TSA is real myopic. Rather than hire more people to figure out how to get the line shorter, they've decided, you know, let's really bug people if they use their sick time. You wonder why people get sick at work, because they come to work sick, getting people sick. You know why I don't eat at Papa John's? Because he doesn't give sick pay. Doesn't give sick time to his people, doesn't give health care. I don't want somebody sick making my frickin' pizza. Of course, if the good people at Papa John's want to donate a pizza to this here Crazy Comics, I will sure than willing giving it a positive review. So, yeah, needless to say.
So you can be bought.
Oh, damn straight. But not by TSA. I mean, the last time TSA did this to me, and I'd have to go way back. Actually, I think it was before we started podcasting. My father-in-law was going through a life-threatening illness, and I stayed home with then baby. Well, Dana was probably 6 or so, and Holly was very. So I stayed home with the kids. Called my boss every day. He said, "Take the time off. Let you take care of it." I came back a week later. I got written up for using sick time. The only reason I didn't quit my job then is because the guy they sent to give it to me, he himself was almost fired because he was sick, took a drug that almost killed him. And while he was in the hospital convalescing, trying to decide whether to live or die, TSA was all ready to fire him. So my wife's work are incredible. Oh, we are so sorry. Take the week off. Take next week off if you need it. Me, I'm like Oliver Twist asking for more gruel. Oh, please, can I have a day off to bury my mother-in-law? No! Or if you do, we will write you off. People, I don't care about your long wait lines. That's what I'm freaking on. Corey, what are you freaking on?
There was some news in the comics world this week that while it didn't surprise me, it is still something I'm freaking on. Shelley Bond, who has been an editor at DC Comics for over 20 years, was the current editor-in-chief at Vertigo, has been let go. She probably could see the writing on the wall.
Not that that's ever happened to you.
No.
Never.
No, I was never fired. I was laid off. Because, well, there's a difference. Legally, there's a difference. She was let go. And they haven't said, but basically someone else is, it's one of those where, you know, she didn't lose her job. The job is still there. It's just someone else is there doing it. But the signs have been there. They did kind of a Vertigo relaunch last year. None of the books sold very well. Even my beloved Art Ops does not sell very well. They brought in musician Gerald Way to run a Vertigo-like line. And I forget the name of it. And a lot of the people, you know, I talked earlier in the podcast about how books that would have been at Vertigo or would have been at Dark Horse are now over at Image. And the main reason they're not at Vertigo is with the reshuffling, creators no longer retain the media rights for the books they do at Vertigo. It used to be that Time Warner got first look. And if they didn't want to do a TV series or a movie or whatever based on the comic, the creators could shop it around. And after it was out of print for a while, they could take it to other publishers. That no longer exists. So creators who are kind of known, like Brian K. Vaughan, 10 years ago, Saga would have been at Vertigo. 10 years ago, Paper Girls would have been at Vertigo. 10 years ago, Nowhere Men would have been at Vertigo. Now it's going to be over at Image because Image gives much better creator rights. She was an incredible editor. Every creator I have talked to said that she made her work better. And if you want to know how good an editor she was, go back to Solitaire Rose Radio where I interview Matt Brundage, where he talks about how she helped him improve his art. That's what an editor should do. The second thing I am freaking on, Joe, my friend Tommy is getting married.
Were you freaking that he's getting married?
No. Oh. I think it's great. He and his lovely fiance, wonderful people. Very glad that Tommy has found love. They seem to be very happy together. They had a pre-wedding party Friday night at the Richfield American Legion. Now, I'm from a small town, and I don't know about these pre-wedding parties. I've never really been to one, and my friend Tommy's really cool. So I thought, it's at an American Legion, and there's going to be a band there at 8:30, but it's Tommy, so it's not going to be lame, right? It's not going to suck, right? Oh, Joe. First off, the menu for this American Legion, you could have burgers and fries, or burgers and fries, or burgers and onion rings. Nothing I could eat because I'm vegetarian. I had the onion rings for supper. That was my meal because all of the appetizers, meat in them. Mm-hmm. Oh, do you have mozzarella sticks? No, we don't have mozzarella sticks. We have chicken fingers. So I had.
I didn't even know they had fingers.
Had an order of onion rings, but that wasn't the terrible part. The terrible part was when the band started. I have not been to an American Legion on a Friday night ever. I'm not saying that I'm an extra cool human being. I'm not saying that I'm, too cool for school. But after having been at this American Legion on a Friday night, I know I'm cooler than that. Because here was this band. It was a suburban mom with a pixie cut and 4 dads playing cover versions of late 70s and early 80s songs. And let me tell you something, you ain't lived until you have been in an American Legion on a Friday night at a over-caffeinated suburban mom is rocking the hell out to Lover Boys, working for the weekend at full blast. I love my friend Tommy, but my God, that was too much to ask. It was too much to ask. Here's the suburban mom singing ZZ Top songs. And the band, I swear, I am not making this up, showed up in a minivan with their equipment. I had to leave early. And when I got in my car, I put in Reverend Horton Heat's latest CD, Rev, and I turned it up as loud as it could possibly go, so to cleanse my palate of the cover version of Counting Crows' Rain King echoing through my ears. I don't get it. Joe, do people actually enjoy that?
What are you talking about? I opened the episode with Kipadana.
Do people actually enjoy going to an American Legion to listen to a bunch of suburbanites in their 40s play cover versions of the songs they listened to in high school?
Was there alcohol involved?
Yes.
Okay, that answers the question.
Now I understand why I stay home. Joe, what are you geeking on?
I've been reading lots of books, lots of comics, tremendous amounts of comics. I had no effing clue who Glenpool was, or Gwenpool, the unbelievable Gwenpool. And I went to the source a couple Fridays ago. They happen to be, what's nice is they stay open till midnight on Friday, mostly for gaming. But I picked up my daughter from her friend who happens to be a boy.
Now, which daughter is this?
Holly.
Okay. Because Dana's in her 20s,
Yes.
so if you're picking her up from seeing her boyfriend, that's not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
Because she's saying, Dad, get me the hell out of here.
So I picked up a #1 Gwenpool variant. There was no other Gwenpools in the store. And I got to admit, this is kind of freaking funny stuff. The whole premise of Gwenpool, which I didn't realize, she's from our world. And she knows she's a comic book character. And so she reacts like you and I would probably react if we were a comic book character. And with some of that, I believe she might be able to be hurt. But so far, just reading issue 1, it doesn't look like can be killed. And she doesn't have any superpowers, so that's what makes it equally weird. And of course, Cory, you'll have to pick it up because you know who shows up at the end. MODOK.
Oh, MODOK!
Yep. So you did.
I love MODOK.
I wasn't quite sure about this whole Gwenpool thing, but I think I'm definitely going to pick up on some of this. It was kind of fun. It's hard getting me into newer stuff, though. I've been slowly as I'm going through stuff, trying to get rid of what I don't want to read, or I notice that I'm out of certain books that I just can't find anymore. I've talked about it in the past. I've talked about when I pick them up, but the new Teen Titans current format is paperback, and they come out every couple months. I believe Volume 5 has just been solicited through previews. And I picked up Volume 1, and I'm talking, these are the ones from the 80s when Marv Wolfman, George Perez, and Romeo Thengel was working on them. They came out of nowhere. They rivaled the X-Men in terms of popularity, and so much that they actually did a crossover between the new Teen Titans and the X-Men.
Which is one of my favorite comics ever.
I believe.
And it's by Walt Simonson.
Yes. So, but these are the original ones. I've talked about Volume 1 before. A big complaint I had at it. One of the volumes, I ripped through them, so they're all blurred to me. 2, 3, and 4. You're talking, we start at New Teen Titans number 9, and it goes all the way through number 27, including the annual and including, there was a miniseries called Tales of the Titans, where they were on a picnic and they just talked about the background characters of the newer guys, Beast Boy, Cyclops, Raven, and Starfire. So it was actually kind of a continuation of that. And I'm having a lot of fun doing this. We talked, I believe, the last podcast about, or was it 2 ago, about just DC's not leaving these things in print, but they're republishing them. And I think that's kind of the model that both Marvel and DC are doing. And I'll mention something as we get to the next books I'm geeking on. The Champions. I picked up Champions Classics #1 long time ago. Didn't have a #2. #2 was out of print. I was able to find it on eBay, which was pretty cool. And it started out, Tony Isabella was writing the story, and they were really good. And then Bill, Mantlo?
Bill Mantlo.
Yeah. And he just wrote it like a comic book, which means action all the way to the very end, and then maybe no real resolution, just boom. It's kind of like in the Iron Man crossover, where I think Marvel must have decided to push Champions hard, because as the regular series was winding up, they crossed them over in Iron Man Annual, Avengers 163, Supervillain Team Up 14, and then at number 17, it just ended. To be continued in Avengers, and it was wrapped up in Spectacular Spider-Man 17 and 18. But it's like in the Iron Man Annual, they're fighting and MODOK again for Cory.
Yay, MODOK!
And they're fighting, and MODOK's in the third to last panel. MODOK is still trying to get away, and a lucky shot from Iron Man Repulsor. Don't stop! I can't be destroyed! I am MODOK! Boom! Too late. And sometime later, the Champions are sitting there kind of watching Iron Man walk out as he's thinking, I have to go and recharge and do something leisure and blah, blah, blah. It's like they got to the end of it. Guys, we have like less than 3 panels to finish the story. Okay, blow up MODOK. Everybody's done. And that continues through Mantlow's entire run. It's kind of like even in the next issue. Oh my God, this art is terrible. Who the hell did it? Excuse me while I back up a bit here. Fortunately, I do reprint it. Oh, this is an Avengers. So Jim Shooter's writing this, and G. Tuska is doing the art.
George Tuska.
Yeah, with Pablo Marcos doing the inks. Oh, terrible. But same thing. They're fighting, bam, 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 over. And it even goes into super villain team up. Well, again, Mantlow's doing the story, and the incredible Bob Hall is doing it. The only Bob Hall I remember is the guy who used to come in the old comic shop and, oh, watching wrestling, huh? Yeah. Fake? So, but these were fun stories to go through. I didn't have them in my collection. The reason I mention is because they came out in a Masterworks just recently. So the trades went out of print, and now the Masterworks are the way to get it. And I had to look to make sure, before I actually bought Volume 2 off eBay, to make sure that the Masterworks wasn't putting something in it that wouldn't be available in these 2 volumes. So I figured I'd just pick up the volumes. You know me. I love me back issue. Well,
hold on. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Bob Hall.
Ooh.
Because I remember Bob Hall was an artist at Marvel. He did Champions. He did Supervillain Team Up. He actually drew the issue of Marvel Team Up, the Saturday Night Live issue. But the thing I remember from back then was he was involved in an off-Broadway play called The Passion of Dracula, which got mentioned in every Marvel comic in the 70s at some point or another. So he must have been like arm-twisting people to, hey, come on. He and Shooter must have been friends because he ended up at Valiant when Shooter did. And then after Jim Shooter left, he wasn't just an artist. He also was a writer and penciler and eventually did some editorial work at Valiant. He was also an editor for a couple of years at Marvel. So he was a guy who was in and around comics for a long time. But he also worked in theater as an actor and a playwright. So
he wasn't related to the guy who thinks wrestling's fake?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good then.
Okay.
I've talked a lot.
Wait. Wrestling's fake?
Fixed. Predetermined. Never fake.
Okay, thank goodness. You scared me for a minute.
Sometimes I forget you're listening. Tomorrow's Publishing does 2 issues, 2 magazines that Cory and I absolutely love. Back Issue and Alter Ego. With Back Issue number 87, it was a special Batman and Superman issue. And they started talking about the many deaths of Batman. And this was something that I remember reading, but I didn't have the issues, and I had no idea what issues they were. But fortunately, Back Issue not only mentioned that they were, Batman issues number whatever, but they also told me that I could go get them in the trade paperback, The Strange Deaths of Batman. So, again, the same night that I went and picked up my Gwenpool comic, we stopped by the Source, and they happened to have this on the shelf, and I picked it up. And the Batman issues, I believe, were Where Were You on the Night Batman Was Killed? From Batman 291 to 292 and 97. Again, maybe my brain is, I was a kid reading these, so they were obviously a lot better than they didn't really hold up well. But it was fun to read. And of course, there's oodles, and I'm talking oodles now, or plethora for those of you who like the letter P, of other stories of Batman's death. So there's a lot of reading in this. I read, of course, the Batman issues right away, and I can see where I think they did an Adventures of Batman like this, where the guys are sitting around playing poker talking about who killed Batman. And of course, I don't want to reveal, the surprise ending, because obviously, as you and I know, Batman wasn't really dead. So
what?
Well, maybe he was.
Spoilers.
Well, you could have figured it out. Ben Affleck's still playing him. Some people's kids, I'm telling you. I mentioned eBay a bit. A couple things I picked up. Marvel Comics Live. They came through the cities the other day, and I did not pick them up or actually go to the show, mainly because my kids are old enough where they don't really care, and I would have felt funny, and it's just one of those things. They have a comic that they were selling there, which either they are selling or you're not, but either way, I just picked it up for the heck of it. Marvel Universe Live #1. And they have a couple different prints, and I picked up one, $20. It was kind of interesting. I thought it was kind of fun. I picked up a Hot Wheel that was available originally only in Japan that had the artwork from an artist called Voltaire. Cory, have you heard of this gentleman before?
Yes, not only have I heard of him, I actually have a couple of his CDs. He toyed in comics for a little while.
Yeah, I think it was Slave Labor.
Yes.
And
I don't remember what he did. I just remember he kind of was involved in comics. He did a lot of conventions, and for his panels, he would actually sing and perform. So I was never a huge fan, but I was given his CDs. So I was like, oh, these aren't terrible.
Well, he had done a convention and did a series of Hot Wheels, and they're fairly expensive if you can find them. I mean, over $100. But I was able to find someone who had a loose one for sale. I've got one of the two he's done, and so now I have the second one. I mean, it's $60. It was that or pay, $120 for a sealed one that I couldn't play with. And you know me, I love playing with my cars. I mean, I've got the VW Bug from Field of Dreams. I've got Roy Schneider's truck from, no, it wasn't Roy Schneider. Who's the guy from Close Encounters? Department of Water and Power. And then I got the American Vacation, what was it called? Truckster 3000? Oh.
The Family Truckster.
Yes, I've got that. I've got that right in front of me. I've been mentioning that Holly and I stopped by the Source. They stayed open late, and I picked up the paperback we talked about before, the Gwenpool. Holly picked up the Spawn coloring book. It's a craze right now, the adult coloring books, and this one was was magazine size, maybe a little bigger, and it had not only scenes from the comic, but some incredibly super detailed Todd McFarlane artwork. Now, I don't have any clue if Holly knows who Spawn is. I don't know if she knows who McFarlane is, but she did ask if I have Spawn comics, and I actually have a run of them somewhere. So she's kind of interested in that. But she took to it like a fish to water and just really into the intricate details in that. So I guess, I don't know, are you into this coloring phase, Cory?
I am not. I am not doing the adult coloring books. Now, there is a thing online where I will download these designs. They're called mandala coloring pages. Every so often I will download one of those, print it out, and just play with it while I'm watching TV or something. And because they're very abstract designs, it's basically, okay, I want the colors to match. I don't want two of the same colors next to each other. And it reminds me a lot of when I was a kid. I colored differently from other kids, I think, because I didn't much care for coloring books. They all seemed too simple. But what I would do, I would take a piece of paper and I would take a pen and I would make a design, just basically doing loops and circles and stuff like that all over the page. And then when I got done, I would color it, making sure that I never had a single color touching itself. It's okay. If I put blue here, anything that connects to that, I can't use blue on, and so on and so on and so on. And that's what I do with these abstract coloring pages. I do the same thing as kind of a relaxing thing. But I'm actually really surprised at how much comics are jumping into this, to the point where Mad Magazine is making fun of it. Both Marvel and DC are going to be putting stuff out. Sounds like Image has put one out. I don't know how long this craze will go, but people are interested in it. And some of the artists at the Comic-Con are actually talking about how they will have printed pages for people, to take in color. Maybe we're all turning 7 again. I don't know.
Cory, do you eat Lucky Charms?
Sadly, no.
Oh. See, I've got number 4 of a 4-issue series that the mini comic inside Lucky Charms, and and I need the other 3. So I was reaching out to see if you could help me, but nope, never mind. The other thing that I'm geeking on, in my Facebook panel, I have my Facebook page. If you go under photo albums, I actually have an album with pictures from Hot Comics and some of the Hot Comic stuff. It's an open album, so anybody can look at it. Part of what was going on with my mother-in-law is I went through all of our digital pictures and I put them in a picture frame so that they could put it, as part of the memorial, pictures with my mother-in-law. But I ran across a bunch of photos from Crazy Comics, things that I've never actually put online before. So I'll be putting them online shortly after this here podcast drops. So if you want to see just how freaking small Crazy Comics was, it'll give you a chance to get an idea of just how teeny tiny it was. And these were actually taken during Free Comic Book Day, and which one is actually coming up pretty quick and not too far away in May 7th. So just kind of fun. If you ever want to know, I don't have a lot of pictures of the big store, but the pictures up I have do show the conversion from the small to the big store. And so just give you a couple comparisons. And I've decided, for the good of this here podcast, I am going to buy all of DC's Rebirth, just so we can talk about it.
Well, good for you.
Well, that and Discount Comic Book Service was doing like 60% off. So, it's not totally altruistic. But the other thing I'll mention is be curious if, the new 52 Batman #1 is like $100 comic. The variants are crazy. All the books are crazy in that series. Will it repeat itself again? I don't know. That was kind of what people were all excited. This is the first time we had a new Action Comics #1 and Batman #1. But, going to the well again. Oh, well, we'll see. Cory, what's got you geeking? What's got you happy today?
I talked a little about it earlier. I saw Purple Rain down at Target Field. I am not a crowd person. I am not a person who likes to go to big events. I don't even go to the big concerts anymore because I just don't like being in a crowd that big. I don't care for it. But this was kind of a big deal, and it felt important, and it felt cool. And the field itself is pretty cool, but watching that movie on a big screen with so many people and people getting up and dancing during the music sequences and everything, it was a very cool experience. I'm very, very happy I went. Jim Starlin has finished his Thanos story. He has been doing original graphic novels and miniseries and other things, and a Thanos annual. And so the last part, the Infinity Finale, has come out as a hardcover. And while I have some problems with parts of the story, the fact that Marvel let Jim Starlin do this huge, sprawling Thanos story, and it's very clear that he did what he wanted to do, because he does some things that I'm really surprised Marvel allowed through, including creating new cosmic entities. It does tie in with Secret Wars in a couple of ways. It does tie in with the Annihilation in a number of ways. Normally when an older creator comes back to work on a character, they tend to ignore the other parts of the universe. That's right. I'm talking to you, John Byrne.
Hey, Johnny.
But Starlin actually brought that stuff into his story in a way that made his story feel like, okay, this is a big part of the Marvel Universe. And we had, I think it's 3 original hardcover graphic novels.
And 4, because I think he did the Adam Warlock one as a miniseries and then as a graphic novel.
Yes. But there are now 3 hardcover Thanos books. And it just reminds me that 5-6 years ago, Marvel said, oh, we won't be doing original graphic novels. The money just doesn't make sense. They have figured out how to make the money make sense, and they're doing more and more of them. There was a Spider-Man one, there was an Avengers one, and now the 3 Thanos ones. If you were a fan of Warlock in the 70s, if you were a fan of the Infinity Gauntlet, you're going to want these. And where Marvel uses Thanos from here, I don't know. But it's very clear that Jim Starlin has now finished his story. And he left it better than he left it better than he found it. And I'm very happy. It was a good run. And that 4-issue miniseries by Alan Davis, Alan Davis needs to be drawing a comic every month.
Yeah. Yep.
Alan Davis has been in comics for 30 years, and a lot of people, when they've been in comics for a long time, they tend to, phone it in, or they aren't very good anymore. Alan Davis's art is better than it has ever been. His stuff is phenomenal. And even when you read it digitally, he's an artist who knows how to put a page together so that it works as a page, but it also works on your computer screen. He's got to be one of the best artists ever to work in comics. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up for a geeking, Joe, I've been talking about the comic The Vision since the first issue. Are you picking it up?
I ordered the trade.
You may want to go to the shop. I would like everybody listening to the podcast next time they're in a comic shop to go look at the letters page of Vision number 6. Because I had a letter printed.
Ooh.
I was never a big letter writer like a guy like Bo Smith or Uncle Elvis or T.M. Maple, but I would write letters to comics, and I still do from time to time, not as much as I used to, but it's so fun. First off, I'm glad they brought letters pages back, because letters pages, when I was a kid, were kind of important to, it was where the editors kind of talked to the readers and you felt more connected. And I think if DC wants to rebuild that connection with fans, adding a letters page would really help. Because they go, now, you could go to the message board. You go to DC's message board, and it's a waste of time. But I wrote how much I enjoyed the Vision as a character before, how much I enjoyed it now, and the writer used some of the stuff that I said to go, hey, you're really going to like what's coming up in later issues, which is how a letters page is supposed to be. You get feedback from the fans, and you use it to hype what's coming. But it's kind of cool to, hey, I'm in a Marvel comic again. I haven't been in a Marvel comic since the Wolverine series a few years ago. But I still write letters now and then to comics that I really enjoy. And there it is. Believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blather on about funny books for an hour and a half.
Bless you.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
I look forward to a time when, regardless of gender, ethnicity, orientation, or religion, all are treated equally as prey. Cthulhu 2016. Cory, hit my music.